Hello to everybody. I'm Katja Stargar. I come from Slovenian Book Agency, and we are one of the partners who are working together with 5 other partners on the Every Story Matters European project that is co-financed by Creative Europe. In this project, we want to encourage the creation of more inclusive books for children and adults, and to give different book professionals, and here we mean from everybody, from authors to publishers, librarians, editors. We want to give them tools and strategies needed to become more inclusive and make diversity mainstream. And what do we mean by inclusive books? These are not just books that in which the plot or the character or the illustrations feature diverse socioeconomic or cultural background, different gender, sexual preferences, or mental and physical abilities or disabilities. By inclusive, we mean the literature that reflects and honors all readers, regardless to their differences, whatever are those. But inclusive books are also something else. These are books that use the right paper or right font or colors so people with certain disabilities can read them. Inclusive books are also ebooks where you can change size of the font or size of the letters or the font to see better. Inclusive books are also audiobooks, so you don't have to read to get the content of the book. During Every Story Matters project, we had many online discussions on inclusivity and diversity, and each time we noticed that there is so much more to learn and that people are interested in getting quality information on this subject. Therefore, we have decided to also prepare a charter on inclusivity, but also we have many we have decided to also prepare some lectures that would help publishers to do their books more inclusive. On our B2B platform that is available on our website, we have noticed that many of the publishers that already do inclusive books are smaller when we talk about their staff quantity. So they don't have time or money to send their editors to different conferences abroad to learn about new computer programs, about new applications that offer you more easier way to do inclusive books. So we have decided that we will bring some modern technology closer to you. But before we go to actual lecture of today, I want to invite you to check our new videos on talents, illustrators, and writers that are included in our program. The video is available on our website. And I would also like to point out amazing program on inclusivity and diversity that was held during the Zagreb Book Festival in end of May. Presentations which took place in Zagreb are still available again on our website. Today we will have a lecture from Marko Hercog. He's editor in Slovenia at the Beletrina publishing house, and the lecture is called Ebooks, Audiobooks and Accessibility. Ebooks and audiobooks can present a content which otherwise is harder to be seen or to be heard by people with certain disabilities. So we will try to show you new ideas, new programs and applications, how to use them and to make your work as an editor easier. So Marko has really more than 20 years of experiences, and when I need to know something, I mostly ask him if he has time to answer. So I hope he's already with us, and so that I can give the word now to him.
So Katya asked me to speak something about the connection with accessibility and maybe some wider things. I at the end decided to go with accessibility and ease of access, although accessibility is quite a wide term today. So since 22nd December 2016, the Web Accessibility Directive, which was been by EU, has been enforced and provides people with disabilities with better access to website and mobile apps of public services. So there is a legislation already connected to accessibility, but generally speaking, what is accessibility now? Accessibility actually means that people can do what they need to do in similar amount of time and with the effort as somebody else does that doesn't have that disability. We could say something that people are empowered, can be independent, and will not be frustrated by something that's poorly designed or badly programmed or just not well implemented. But according to today's topics, on 28th of June 2025 is the date that was set by EU, which EU will start demanding from all the e-content publishers to comply with accessibility requirements. So it means that everything will have to be compliant with that law. So the persons with disability, especially with print disability, will be able to use content just the same way as the person with such disability does. We won't go into technical details today of accessibility, since this is a quite complex area and involves quite a lot of, let's say, technical coding language, and I'd rather talk about features that are available to let's say, the other users and the creator content, which are more editorial approach on the field of ebooks and audiobooks. So my view of ebooks and all the e-content is similar to this. It's something like an iceberg, a complex structure which users and see only a portion of it, but the creators, the editors, and everybody who is participating there is seeing the whole structure. So it means the vast amount of data is actually hidden to an actual user. So if we would say ebook is actually more similar to a web page than, let's say, something like PostScript PDF document, which has been the standard in print production for a long time, and all workflows has been a long time adjusted only to produce PDF documents. I've been lecturing about ebooks now for almost a decade, and during that decade, I have actually realized that all things are tending to change, all things are tending to get organized, but after 10 years of new standards, new features, new programs, new platforms, we are still left with quite a lot of open and unanswered questions remaining. We do have now a lot of standards, but in the field of implementation, everything is quite poor still. So if we go into the topic today, the print disability. The definition of print disability would be a print disabled person is a person who cannot effectively read because of some reasons which are not technical reasons, are some compliant with the abilities, and cannot at the end manipulate a book. Newer, this is a very old definition, it's quite long by George Kersher, but the newer has been definition which has been quite shortened, although it does not comply everything. Says users unable to read standard printed material due to blindness, visual disability, physical limitation, organic dysfunction, or dyslexia. There are some definitions or some areas missing in that definition, although it covers pretty much of everything. So if I look into these fellows, maybe you recognize them, but they're from some completely other contexts or different backgrounds, but I could say it illustrates print disabilities on pretty much similar way. Because if we look at the general level, there are more than 60% of population which is experiencing some kind of accessibility issue, whether it's a blindness, visual disability, physical limitation, organic dysfunction, dyslexia, or cognitive impairment due to head or brain injuries. So mostly people are always focusing on visual disabilities. It's actually true, since visual disability is something that with aging will affect most of us, so practically all the population. But there are also some other impairments which are quite relevant, and the users who are affected by them are also readers of the book. I remember I just had a case ago when somebody called me how to help a person who is a tetraplegic. So actually can't move, almost whole body is completely immobilized, and it can only have a slight movement with head and able barely to speak, but with very, very, very well functioning brain. So if the person with such disability wants to read book, there needs to be quite a lot of effort put in it. But momentarily, he was just reading a book which was on a music stand, and somebody was turning the pages for him. So it was actually one thing that we were trying to find the way which would suit him most, although has some kind of technical gadgets around him, and which are helping him to move around with the electric chair and stuff like this. So we could actually conclude that ebooks and audiobooks make reading accessible, but generally speaking, all digital files are not accessible by default. So it means that when we create an ebook and audiobook, by default, by general programs which produce them, are far from accessible. They do cover some accessibility features, but for fully coverage of accessibility experience, we will need to put quite some effort into it. And so it means that programs today cannot make such files by default. They will do some work, but the other work will have to be done by us or the programmer or the editor, whatever it takes to do it. If we go and take a look into ebooks first. Ebooks have been around for quite a long time. It's been the last while decade since they have reached a peak, and since the Amazon launched first platform with Kindle, and it's been a wide ride actually. But there has been development in the past 10 years. There has been development of really vast amounts of ecosystem, and that development has actually become one of the downgrades when talking about user experience and also the accessibility. One of the major reasons is DRM, since books needs to have some kind of control over the content flow, and publishers demand books to be DRM. Not all over the world, but certain parts of the world actually function quite well with books without DRM. So today we have an ePub 3 as standard, which has been developed by the IDPF, which is now a bit different organization since it merged with V3C, and they continue to work on standards. So ePub 3 is quite complex format. It has a lot of features available, different rendering of all features, multimedia, complex content, overlays. I could go on for a day, what everything is in documentation. But in some ways, I could say that would be actually would make more sense to still produce ePub 2 content, since it has less possibilities and content would be displayed more equally on different ecosystems. Since most of the books today are in reflowable format, but there has always been from the beginning the fixed format, where the real trouble begins. And even if it looks very promising at the beginning, it actually turned out to be that there are more problems with it than benefits. Some publishers still produce fixed format textbooks, but not because they would have to do it or because the content is like this, but because for some of them it's actually easier to make some kind of an export which actually looks like a print page, and at the end they're quite happy about it and the results, what came out. Ebooks has quite a lot of features available. The application itself, ebook actually needs some kind of dedicated app to open it, and that app is then limiting what are we capable of doing with it. So ebook can't be opened with any, let's say, major tools which cover some variety of formats, but it needs separated tool. There are quite huge diversity of apps available, especially on mobile platforms. So we have mobile apps, we have desktop computer apps, and we also have some applications which are actually packed in browsers. So it means that you can open and read book inside of a web browsers like Safari, Chrome, Edge, whatever you use these days. But there are still quite big issues since ePubs are actually not transferable between the platforms, or put it on the other way, some ebooks will render differently on different platforms, especially when it goes to special content like footnotes, like media, windows, overlays, also some special features like MathML might cause problems. There are better ebook reading apps, and there are not so much good apps. For instance, one of the things is that footnotes will show completely different if you open book in iBooks, which is an Apple platform, or in some Adobe program, which half the world actually is using, and it does those kind of rendering completely different. And as we mentioned before, we have still fixed format books, and the problems with them. I remember a few weeks ago I had a book which we had to convert to ebook, and the publisher demanded it was actually a textbook which had some let's say decoration, some elements on the page which are not actually content connected, but they were just some graphical elements without any content. And he actually demanded that we preserve such a form, and at the end we said, no, you cannot put on equal level a printed book and an audio and ebook, since it have a completely different technical approach, and at the end the consumer does it on a completely different way. Since at the end we saw now that quite a lot of users are using smaller screens, so it means mobile phones to read books, and with such ornaments and elements on the screen, you actually don't get quite a lot of text anymore on the screen, which is then a completely different idea about it. But anyway, reading applications should show us on a flexible way how to move around the application. We can go it by table of contents. We can use print page numbers or the bookmarks. So we have some kind of a way to go around, which is quite good comparing to a normal books, because we can very quick switch from one page to another and quickly search and make remarks and do all kinds of stuff that we can't do in the physical books. So the other thing is that we have possibility and ability to change visual presentation of the content to suit your needs. So it means we can adjust the look, the visual look of a book itself. So this is one of the major things in ebook, that reflowable formats is enabling us to tailor the text to our needs, to maybe to our disability or whatever we like to do. And there are in some books built-in read aloud features with visual highlighting. This was one of the key features in the first generation of fixed page layout books, which were like children's picture books, which were read aloud, doing a read aloud text and highlights the text also. So like some karaoke style or something like that. And there are also a lot of applications which have installed TTS. So it means they are actually able to read content. And on the other hand, some application also has installed Braille output, so they can actually project the content into some third party or some other device for reading. So the adjustable features in ebook are, first of all, like we speak before, font size. So it means we can have quite a lot of text on a screen or a very few words. I remember when we were discussing with people with visual disabilities, we actually ended up in our application that it was maximum size of font was so big that it was only, I think, 4 lines of text on a bigger screen. So it means on a 10-inch screen, there were 4 lines of text. So this was actually their demand, and they were able to read it. So actually the people with very low percentage of what's left of them of their vision were still able to read it. But for somebody normal, it looked kind of ridiculous, but for them it was very helpful, because then we actually realized that quite a lot of application doesn't do that much maximum sizes. So they do stop at some half of it what we end up before. So I remember I have a colleague who has like 3% of left of the vision on one eye, and actually on some middle stage he can set up the font so he can actually read from like 10 centimeters or something like that, but usually he's reading very close to a paper, so it means he's like a few centimeters away from the text from a normal typo. So the other thing is we can change a font style. It means we can change typography, although this is not actually a feature on all books, since the publishers tend to install multiple fonts, and then the application actually gets quite confused, and it doesn't have the ability to change all the font styles into something other. But one of the most important thing is here that on all applications there should be present font which is good for dyslexic people. This is one of the possible solutions for dyslexics to adjust content to their needs. Then we also have possibility to adjust line spacing, so if they are more wide or they are more close, and layout, so it means we have narrow or wider margins, which is also connected to this, the amount of text we will put on the screen. And lately, especially on e-readers in a couple of years, which development of e-ink screens have been, we have now possibility also to adjust tone of background. So I'm not speaking about the day-night mode, what we used to have from the very beginning, but we actually have possibility to change the color of the screen. So it means it can go from, let's say, from some yellow towards red or a bit more blue temperature. So on the other hand, on the one hand, we can adjust the backlit. It means the intensity of the lights that we have, and on the other hand, we can now control the temperature. But there are also some other applications also offer, let's say, the other background. So it means you can turn on like beige background, which is more not so intense, and it's also one of the features that it's suitable for dyslexic readers. And of course, what I've mentioned before, you can switch from day mode to a night mode with the, so it means you can invert the text, so the text is white and the background is black, so it doesn't shine if you're reading at night or in some other visual low visibility. So speaking of accessibility about ebooks, since ebook is actually something very similar to a web page, so it means the structure is the same as the web page, so the standards are very similar to it. But one of the major things is that we need to address text or content which is not in words or characters. So it means we have quite a lot of content which is graphical content, and ebooks doesn't have that problem with contrasts well, like the web pages do, and with some larger or smaller text. So we barely need to focus on the alt tagging. Alt tagging is one of the, let's say, basic things when talking about accessibility. Alt text, the definition is this is one of the most important features, since it makes publication accessible to everyone, also provides complete reading experience. So it means that people who cannot see picture can still imagine it. So no matter if that kind of graphic or something like this is chapter opener, or there are images which contain important information for content itself, alt text should always be added. And also, if the image has a caption, we have to make sure that the alt text doesn't repeat the same information, and we also have to make sure that alt text is always present, even the image have caption. But then we can put some other text into the alt text, some other details for something like photo showing people standing on the staircases of that and that building. They are looking into the camera, or you need to describe so actually the person who doesn't see the picture can imagine all the details and all the relevance of that picture. So speaking about accessibility, there should be compliant, ebooks should be compliant with WCAG 2 standard. This is not the highest standard, but this is the basic standard now that all needs to comply with. There are also DAISY consortium, which has been quite a long working on the field of accessibility, even in previous formats when the ebooks were not that domestic. There has already been a DAISY format which was used by visually impaired, and they have made quite good tool to test what have you done with your ebooks, or if they have it's called the accessibility checking tool, and there will see quite good results what you have done okay, what you should done, or just to see how what all things should be done when testing the ebook and the accessibility features. According to about the accessibility, we also need to address one thing. If we are comparing the e-ink screen versus the LCD screen, there's a big difference. Since the LCD screen is still emitting some non-ionizing radiation, which some people may find disturbing, especially after a longer use. So when we talk to the people, we actually see that they say, I don't like reading on iPad because it actually does look good, but it's after a couple of hours you get some kind of tired because of this, and it's not really a good a good experience comparing to reading a normal book or reading a book on the e-ink screen, which actually doesn't emit anything towards the user itself. So switching to audiobooks. Audiobooks have actually also been quite a long time present in different formats, but they have actually gained a huge usage growth in last year. Although there are some markets where audio was always actually ahead of ebooks, especially Scandinavian market and in Europe. Like with ebooks, there are also now standards in making or in implementing. So it means W3C, which is now which now has the working groups for audiobooks, also have put up the specifications, which I think were in October of 2020, which has been presented there. And they actually at the end decided not to outline what types of formats should be used by content creators. They have only defined the manifest format for delivering them. So with audiobooks, we have quite a lot of files. There are some dedicated files like OGG or something like that, which have quite good compression comparing, let's say, to MP3 or M4A, or there are really a huge variety of files. So it's kind of similar to ebooks, where we have some proprietary formats which have all some basic formats, but they vary quite a lot. But here audiobook is not that complex as an ebook. So there, I think in the future will be easier to merge them into one, or to switch from one platform to another platform, since we3C is doing quite a lot on promoting and trying to persuade all the distributors to use the same manifest for delivery. Many have asked why actually is ebook now not also working as audiobook. So ePub actually has audio abilities that would contain all the content, but actually ePub is kind of more complex, and it's actually a too big package to be used to wrap just around the audio. So we are taken again into a situation today when everybody is developing their own way of packaging audiobooks. So we have diversity of ecosystems, the same as with ebooks, and mostly they are now switching to some completely different models that we are keen with comparing to ebooks. So it means almost everything is subscription based. There are different business models, from all you can eat to some other which are quite more limited, but generally speaking, ebooks has gained huge success on the subscription base. So the features of audiobooks. Audio format has been system integrated, so it's much easier for system to handle it comparing to other content like ebooks. We are all quite keen to use it since it has intuitive interface. So it means it's really an ease of use. Since the playing devices are actually known to anyone, they recognize the UI, they know how to play it, how to stop it, how to forward it, how to say back, and it's really nothing new comparing to ebooks, which as long as user doesn't understand the logic behind the control, it cannot use it here. And they are narrated, which is main pro and main cons regarding them, because it's possible that sometimes you may not like the narrator of the book. Maybe you don't like his or her voice. Maybe he's narrating the way you wouldn't like to hear or listen to that book, or maybe he's unable to bring life to the book the way you actually expect it. So narration is something that some people would rather hear the generic narration, which doesn't express any feelings, but some people would like to have somebody who has really gone deep into the content and text, and it's almost like a theater then when you're listening to that book. So the actually audiobook is something when you can master also multitasking. It's perfectly portable. Some even call this transportability, which is another advantage about audiobooks, that you can actually commute with audiobook because you have cell phone in your pockets, and everybody now has some wireless Bluetooth hearings, and everything can be done while you are listening to audiobook. Or on the other hand, I remember when the audiobook started to gain, we were looking at some research about the usage, and it was actually like 20% of the users who already started to use audiobooks as a normal book. So it means they were just listening to the book, not while commuting or not while working or anything else. So it actually has gained also that type of consuming. And of course, you can listen to audiobook in the complete dark. You don't need any light. And actually, audiobooks have integrated quite a lot of accessibility features. So it means Some certain disabilities which are on ebooks are here practically not to be mentioned about. But there are, let's say, quite a lot of cons on audiobooks also. The first con is actually their lack of elements. Since they are not able to display the graphic contents, that kind of contents needs to be somehow narrated. And this means that you cannot just straightforward read the book and record it. You actually need editorial work, which goes through graphic materials, also the footnotes, and do it so it won't interfere with regular story flow, but on the other hand, that it will somehow matter to in that hierarchy of all text. And of course, audiobook is actually lacking whole text. If you want to search on text or something like that, you can't do it. There are quite a lot of metadata available, but it's not the whole text. So it means that you need to build very good metadata so the book can be searchable, and also to present the book before the user find it, or actually to user decide for it. And the other thing is also reading speed. For some people, reading is, let's say they would read at least half faster than the narrator does it. Some people would like to have it slower, but then we have quite a lot of applications today which can be adjusted, where the reading speed can be adjusted, but not all. Again, this is the diversity that we have here. And of course, with listening to audiobooks, time is not on your side. So it means you cannot do it more quickly or more slowly, like you're used with the physical book or with ebook. And there's also one thing that cognitively, that actually listening to audiobooks cognitively reduce reading competence. So it means that if users actually would decide only to listen to audiobooks, wouldn't be that much appreciated from cognitivity. So the accessibility features of audiobooks. Well, audio is actually quite strong implemented into the system itself. So there is a long way to go to achieve equality in the access of the information regarding of our physical capabilities. But we can say that audiobooks are really a huge step in that direction. A history of audiobooks is rooted in word accessibility. Or this is like purely audio publications, or the publication which were served as a synchronization text and audio playback. All these features have been assisted users as an alternative ways of reading for quite a long time. But on the other hand, lack of elements, like we mentioned before, the graphics, the footnotes, and the other elements are extra, something that needs to be taken care of extra. And it's very important to implement such content, since this we need to have the full experience, the full reading experience, which is one of the main goals to accessibility. But on the other hand, we have been facing rapid developments of IoT, the Internet of Things hardware, which is now integrated deeply into our lives, and also living quarter, and has given us also virtual assistants which are perfectly capable of playing audiobooks. So we have Alexa, we have Siri, which are the main one, and then we have quite a lot of other gadgets from other manufacturers which do the same things, and actually you don't need much anymore, and just say, Alexa, please, I would like to listen to a book, and you're already doing it. So at the end, I can conclude with the hypothesis that AI-driven devices will have quite huge impact on our way of living in future, and reading, or better say, consuming of books will be just one of them. So the future is definitely on side of ebooks and audiobooks, but I think the full integration will be the next level, and we won't be able to avoid it. So thank you. This was the presentation regarding this. I think we can now switch to Q&A.
Unmute. Thank you, Marko. I should leave you people to, if you have some questions now, otherwise Marko was so nice to write you down his email, but let's see if somebody has something to ask at this moment.
Anna from the Federation of European Publishers pointed out in the chat, it's not a real question, but perhaps an addition, Marko, to what you said in your introduction. I see that Anna has raised her hand. Go ahead, Anna.
Yes, thank you. Well, I have actually a question, because you mentioned that for audiobooks, there were not really a format which was recommended by W3C. And I was wondering, what would you recommend to the publishers if they wanted to, make their audiobooks accessible? I mean, truly accessible in sense that people can navigate them, etc., more than just listening to them. And the comment Yannick was mentioning is, so I represent book publishers across Europe, including the Slovenian ones. And we're working on the implementation of the European Accessibility Act, which means that in 2025, on the 28th of June, all ebooks sold in the European Union will have to be accessible, not just for print impaired, but all type of accessibility. Hence, we are we've been submitting to the Commission, and hope we have good hopes that it's going to be accepted, that ePub 3 fulfills the technical specification required by the Act in terms of accessibility. So publishers who would be using ePub 3 would be actually fulfilling the obligation they will have in June 2025, which is a good news, because it's quite a lot of work to get ready for that date. So, but my question was, you spoke about ebooks and many format, but which one would you recommend? Thank you.
Well, the only format is ePub now. As I mentioned, the problem with
I meant audiobooks.
Oh, about audiobooks. Well, the audiobook is kind of a bit more problematic. The universal format was MP3, but MP3 is quite a huge file. So, for instance, we are now using OGG as a format, but the problem is that OGG is not supported by all platforms, although it's much better than MP3, for instance. So generally now, I think most of the publishers are using M4A format. And this now looks like some kind of a format that might be also good in the future. So since W3C hasn't actually defines the format of itself, it means it will still remain quite a mixture. But I hope that OGG will be also supported at the end on all platforms, since for what have we been doing tests and what have we been doing in process of recording and post production, OGG has turned out to be the best format because it's quite good quality, and the compression makes it very small file comparing to MP3, for instance.
Thank you, Marko. I perhaps also had a question that perhaps is a bit more general, but I think there's still a way to go to become more inclusive or more accessible with ebooks and audiobooks. And I think the European Accessibility Act is already a very good step in that direction, and there's a lot of good work being done. I was wondering if you had, let's say, 3 quick wins or quick implementations that any publisher or most publishers would be able to apply now to already become more accessible. Ones that require maybe a few investments or very little effort, but that they can make a real difference.
Are we talking about audiobooks or ebooks?
Actually both, but I can see that they are of course a bit different or separate entities. So feel free to pick one, I would say,
well,
or answer both.
Let's say, okay, first about ebooks. As I see, most of the publishers actually don't do much from the aspect of accessibility. So it means one of the major things, which is the alt text, are not being fulfilled. Otherwise, so if we fulfill the alt text, then we are missing very small to achieve the full accessibility, since the ebooks are already organized quite well. So if you're really not making some kind of a mess, files would basically need to be okay. Unless if we have a bit more complex structure, then it needs to hierarchy needs to be well sorted out. And besides the alt text, there also, if you're doing an ePub 2 or an ePub 3, are things that you need to consider, since ePub 2 files will need to be converted to ePub 3, and this is not an easy process, and it might be quite time consuming, because things might not go well if you're doing just a straightforward conversion. On the level of audiobooks, there is, let's say, much more complicated, since audiobooks first needs to be recorded, and if we are recording just the text without a narration of footnotes and the narration of graphical content, then this will be quite time consuming to do it, especially because there are no formula to how to do it. Let's say you can decide, or footnote will be read at the end of some chapter, or the footnotes will be completely at the end, or you will do footnotes like some index or something like that. It's really a complicated task if you don't try to package things at the beginning. Otherwise, the metadata section and the other all other background technical service stuff is not that complex. So we must focus on actually the things which are first to be seen. So it means we need alt text in ebooks, and we need narration of non-printed, non-text content in audiobooks.
Thank you, Marko. I don't know if anybody else still has any question. Feel free to pop it in the chat or raise your hand and use your microphone. But I guess that also means you're very complete and clear, Marko.
Sorry?
I guess this also means that you are very complete and clear in your presentation.
Well, I can't comment that because half an hour is not quite much to be talk about such complex topics where you could discuss this all night long about it. Since there is still quite a lot of things in progress, and what I'm saying now, maybe in half year, won't be the really accurate answer anymore. So it's really something that is changing all the time.
Well, if there are no more questions, then I think we can conclude this lecture. And as Marko wrote you down his email, I guess he's ready to answer some more questions later on if needed. Otherwise, I would invite everybody to join us tomorrow on lecture of Maria. And well, that would be it for today. Maybe Yannick, I give you a last word.
Thank you, Katja. Yes, I wanted to thank all of you for being here with us today. Thank you, Marko, for the very interesting lecture. As Katja pointed out, we have another lecture tomorrow with Maria Vlasu from Accesso Cultura about diversity and inclusion, the key concepts and the questions we can ask ourselves. The registrations for this lecture are still open on our website, which is www.everystorymatters.eu, which you'll also find in the chat. And I just wanted to wish you a good afternoon and a good evening. If you have anything coming up about inclusion and diversity, you can always reach out to our organization or project, and we'll be happy to engage with you to start the conversation. We'll keep you updated about our upcoming activities. I guess that's it. Or am I forgetting anything?
No, you're not. I just remember that maybe if now with these lectures, some new ideas or questions will start in our heads, maybe you can also write to us so we can think of another lecture with similar content, but maybe more into the details. It's just we can't really know what everything we can offer you. We just try to find the topics that we find interesting and we think that could make us learn something new. So you see our email, so just write us down and we will try to find something interesting for you.
Yes, that's right. Thank you all for being here today. We will close off the meeting here and I hope to see you again sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Marko, hvala. Ciao.
Bye.
Ciao.